The great hall of the Vexthori diplomatic vessel hummed with a barely contained derision. Captain Elena Chen stood motionless, her dark eyes scanning the semicircle of alien delegates whose crystalline exoskeletons seemed to shimmer with condescension. Behind her, a carefully selected team of Earth's most unassuming warriors maintained a disciplined formation that looked almost comically primitive compared to the sleek, biomechanical augmentations of their alien hosts. Supreme Delegate Crixtal, a towering being of iridescent scales and neural interface tendrils, let out a sound that might have been laughter, a high-pitched oscillation that reverberated through the ship's quantum-resonant walls. "You call these warriors?" The translation matrix carried a tone of pure mockery. Primitive bipeds with nothing more than muscle and outdated kinetic weapons. Chen remained perfectly still. She had been chosen for this moment not because of her combat skills, but because of her ability to become a living blank slate, a canvas upon which the Vexthori could paint their most ridiculous assumptions. The human delegation wore what appeared to be basic combat fatigues, no visible advanced technology, no energy shields, no quantum entanglement communication devices. To the Vexthori, they looked like a museum exhibit of early 21st century military personnel. Bulky ceramic armor plates. Simple projectile weapons. Analog communication devices that looked like relics. "Your species has been observed," Crixtal continued, mandibles clicking in what passed for amusement among his kind, relying on brute physical training. Primitive conditioning. No neural integration, no genetic optimization, no quantum state combat protocols. Another burst of that ear-splitting laughter. What the Vexthori didn't see was the intricate quantum signature embedded in each soldier's movement. What looked like simple marching was actually a complex, living algorithm. What seemed like standard combat stances were actually quantum encryption keys being transmitted through the most fundamental human mechanism possible, physical positioning. Dr. Mariana Rivera, hidden in the command center thousands of light years away, watched the live feed and allowed herself the smallest of smiles. The Vexthori were about to learn that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't technology, it was the ability to be consistently, deliberately underestimated. As the alien delegates continued their performance of superiority, none of them noticed the slight synchronization in the human warriors' breathing. None saw how their seemingly random shifts of weight created a massive, distributed computing network more complex than any centralized system. Captain Chen's hand twitched, almost imperceptibly. To the Vexthori, it was nothing. A random muscular response. To Dr. Rivera, it was the initiation of a system-wide infiltration protocol. The laughter was about to stop. 3 years earlier, in a secure underground facility beneath the Atacama Desert, Dr. Mariana Rivera stood before a holographic display that pulsed with an intricate web of quantum connections. The room hummed with a low-frequency vibration that most would mistake for standard equipment noise, but to Rivera, it was the heartbeat of humanity's most ambitious defense project. "Project Mirage," she muttered, tracing a finger along the holographic lines that represented their global network, "is about to change everything." The project had begun as a radical hypothesis. What if humanity's greatest strength wasn't in matching alien technology, but in creating a form of technological camouflage so complete that it would render traditional advantages meaningless? Captain Chen entered the room, her movements deliberate and controlled. Unlike the military leaders of previous generations, she understood that warfare had become a dance of information, perception, and misdirection. "The Vexthori expect brute force," Chen said, studying the holographic map. "They've been monitoring our communications, our technological development. They see exactly what we want them to see." Rivera nodded. The quantum infiltration program was more than just a defensive strategy, it was a complete reimagining of human potential. Each soldier was now part of a living, breathing computational network. Their training wasn't just physical, it was a complex choreography of movement, positioning, and data transmission. The facility's screens showed recordings of what appeared to be standard military training. Soldiers running obstacle courses. hand-to-hand combat drills, weapons training. But beneath the surface, something extraordinary was happening. Every step was a calculation. Every movement was a code. Every formation was an algorithm. Our warriors aren't just soldiers, Rivera explained, pulling up a complex diagram that looked like a hybrid between a neural network and a military formation. They're walking, talking quantum computers. The Vexthori are looking for advanced technology. Instead, we're turning human biology into the most sophisticated encryption system in the galaxy. The project had required unprecedented cooperation. Quantum physicists worked alongside martial arts experts. Neural engineers collaborated with traditional combat instructors. The result was a training program that looked primitive on the surface but was infinitely more complex underneath. Chen pulled up a simulation of their first contact strategy. "They'll see weakness," she said. "We'll give them weakness. But it's a weakness that's actually our greatest strength." A series of screens showed the carefully crafted personas of the warriors selected for first contact. Each one was meticulously designed to embody the exact stereotype the Vexthori would expect and dismiss. Muscular but seemingly unsophisticated. Heavily equipped but technologically limited. What the aliens didn't know was that each piece of primitive equipment was actually a node in a massive, distributed quantum network. Every movement was a transmission. Every stance was a message. "The coding dance," Rivera said softly, a hint of pride in her voice, "is about to begin." Outside the facility, the desert stretched endlessly, a perfect metaphor for the hidden depths of human potential. Underneath the seemingly barren landscape, humanity was preparing a technological revolution that would redefine the very concept of warfare. The Vexthori thought they were preparing to meet a primitive species. They were wrong. So very wrong. The first wave of Vexthori attack ships dropped out of quantum slip space with surgical precision. Sleek obsidian vessels that looked more like living organisms than machines, they moved with a predatory grace that had conquered hundreds of civilizations before humanity. Supreme Commander Zar-Ux allowed himself a moment of contemptuous satisfaction. The human delegation they'd encountered was clearly nothing more than a preliminary reconnaissance group. Now, the real subjugation would begin. "Target their primary communication centers," Zar-Ux commanded, his neural interface flickering with calculated destruction. "Eliminate their ability to coordinate a response." What the Vexthori didn't realize was that humanity's communication network was nothing like they had anticipated. Deep within the Earth's quantum entanglement network, a system so advanced it appeared to be nothing more than background noise, Dr. Rivera watched the incoming attack with calculated calm. Each Vexthori ship was already mapped, its systems already probed, its vulnerabilities already understood. "Activation sequence initiated," she whispered into her quantum communicator. The first signs that something was wrong came subtly. A navigation vector here. A shield frequency there. Small, almost imperceptible disruptions that the Vexthori initially dismissed as minor technical glitches. Captain Chen stood on the bridge of the UES horizon, her team of primitive warriors moving with a synchronicity that would have seemed impossible moments before. Each soldier was a living node in a network more complex than any centralized computer system. "They're looking for our weaknesses," Chen said to her second-in-command, Lieutenant Rodriguez. "But they don't understand what they're seeing." The Vexthori attack began systematically. Precision strikes against what appeared to be critical infrastructure. Energy weapons that could slice through conventional defenses like a hot knife through butter. They expected minimal resistance. Instead, they found something entirely unexpected. Each destroyed target was actually a quantum-encoded trap. Each seemingly critical infrastructure point was a decoy, a carefully constructed illusion that absorbed the Vexthori's initial assault while the real network remained untouched. Zar-Ux's first indication that something was fundamentally wrong came when his ship's primary navigation system began to corrupt. Not catastrophically, just enough to create doubt. Uncertainty. Impossible, he muttered, his neural interface flickering. But it was happening. Humanity had mapped the entire Vexthori network during that initial diplomatic meeting. Every laugh, every dismissive gesture, every moment of perceived superiority had been carefully recorded, analyzed, and transformed into a comprehensive infiltration strategy. The quantum entanglement network humans had been secretly building wasn't just a defensive system. It was a living, breathing organism of information and possibility. And now, it was awake. "Commander," a junior Vexthori tactical officer reported, his voice trembling, "our systems, they're not responding as expected." Zaryuek stared at the tactical display. For the first time in his centuries-long military career, he felt something he had never experienced before. Genuine, profound uncertainty. The attack had begun. But the real battle was just about to start. The conflict erupted across multiple star systems, transforming from a single engagement into a galactic chess match that defied every known principle of interstellar warfare. Humanity's true strength revealed itself not through overwhelming firepower, but through an unprecedented fusion of biological adaptability and quantum technology. Dr. Rivera's quantum program began systematically dismantling Vexthori defenses, not by brute force, but by understanding and exploiting the most fundamental weaknesses in their technological ecosystem. "It's not about destruction," Rivera explained to the United Earth Command, her holographic display showing intricate networks of quantum infiltration, "it's about transformation." Each Vexthori system fell not with a catastrophic crash, but with a subtle, almost elegant reconfiguration. Defensive networks didn't collapse, they were gently reprogrammed. Weapon systems didn't explode, they were carefully redirected. Captain Chen led the operation from the UES Horizon, her team of warrior programmers executing what could only be described as a living, breathing algorithmic assault. Their movements were simultaneous combat and communication, a language of warfare that transcended traditional understanding. The Vexthori leadership began to fracture. Some advocated for total war, others for immediate surrender. The once unified alien civilization found itself torn apart by the very technological superiority they had previously celebrated. Lieutenant Rodriguez intercepted a high-level Vexthori communication, demonstrating the depth of their infiltration. "Their entire command structure is based on a hierarchical neural network," he reported. "We're not just breaking their systems, we're rewriting their fundamental social architecture." Supreme Commander Zaryuek watched in mounting desperation as his civilization's technological supremacy crumbled. What had seemed like an inevitable conquest became a lesson in humility. Dr. Rivera's quantum program had a deeper purpose beyond mere conflict. Each system infiltrated was also carefully mapped, analyzed, its underlying principles understood. Humanity wasn't just defending itself, it was learning, adapting, growing. "We've turned their laughter into our greatest weapon," Captain Chen remarked, watching as another Vexthori defensive cluster gently realigned itself. The true brilliance of humanity's approach became clear. They hadn't sought to destroy the Vexthori. They had sought to understand them. To communicate with them in a language beyond words, beyond technology, a language of pure potential. As star systems realigned and civilizations trembled, one thing became abundantly clear. The most dangerous weapon was never a gun, a ship, or an algorithm. It was the ability to transform the unexpected into opportunity. The remnants of Vexthori's civilization gathered in their most sacred chamber, a vast, crystalline space that had once symbolized their technological supremacy. Now it felt like a mausoleum of shattered assumptions. Supreme Commander Zaryuek stood at the center, his once brilliant neural tendrils now dim and fractured. Around him, the Leadership Council, those who had laughed so confidently at humanity, now wore expressions of profound shame and bewilderment. "We underestimated them," Elder Strategist NX Rao spoke, her voice a brittle whisper. "We saw only what we wanted to see." Captain Elena Chen arrived with a delegation that defied every expectation. No massive warships. No overwhelming military display. Just a small group of individuals whose very presence seemed to radiate a complex, almost living intelligence. Conflict is a failure of communication, Chen began, her words carefully translated through quantum resonance protocols that allowed for nuanced understanding beyond simple language. We're not here to conquer. We're here to understand. Dr. Mariana Rivera stood slightly behind Chen, her holographic interface subtly mapping the emotional and neural responses of the Vexthori leadership. Every twitch, every subtle neural fluctuation was being analyzed, not as a potential threat, but as a pathway to mutual comprehension. The Vexthori civilization had been built on a fundamental misconception, that technological superiority equaled ultimate power. Humanity demonstrated a different paradigm. Power wasn't about overwhelming force, but about adaptability, understanding, and the ability to transform potential threats into opportunities for growth. Zaryux found himself experiencing an emotion entirely foreign to his species, humility. How? He asked, a raw vulnerability in his voice. How did we miss everything? Lieutenant Rodriguez stepped forward, demonstrating a series of movements that looked like a hybrid of martial arts and quantum programming. Each gesture was simultaneously a combat technique and a complex mathematical equation. We didn't hide our capabilities, he explained. We integrated them so completely that they became invisible. The chamber filled with a subtle quantum resonance, a communication that transcended spoken language. The humans weren't presenting terms of surrender or conquest. They were offering something far more profound, a complete reimagining of what conflict and cooperation could mean. Dr. Rivera's quantum network began to subtly interface with the Vexthori's own systems. Not to control, but to heal. To demonstrate that technological integration could be an act of mutual understanding rather than domination. Your civilization is not destroyed, Captain Chen said firmly. It is being given an opportunity to evolve. The Vexthori leadership looked at each other, the first seeds of a new understanding taking root. They had entered this encounter believing in their absolute superiority. They were leaving with something far more valuable, a lesson in true strength. Humanity's greatest weapon had never been its technology. It had always been its capacity for transformation. 5 years after the initial conflict, the Galactic Collaborative Nexus stood as a testament to humanity's most extraordinary achievement. What had begun as a potential war of annihilation had transformed into a revolutionary approach to interstellar cooperation. The training facility on New Terra, once a secret underground complex in the Atacama Desert, now served as the primary institution for what would become known as adaptive conflict resolution. Species from across the galaxy came to learn a radical new approach to understanding, communication, and potential conflict. Dr. Mariana Rivera stood before a diverse group of cadets, humans, Vexthori, and representatives from dozens of other civilizations. Her lecture halls were no longer about warfare, but about the intricate dance of mutual understanding. Strength is not about overpowering, she explained, her holographic display showing complex quantum interactions, it's about the ability to transform potential conflict into collaborative opportunity. Captain Elena Chen, now Chief Diplomatic Strategist of the Galactic Collaborative Nexus, watched from the back of the lecture hall. The warriors who had once been dismissed as primitive now trained diplomats and conflict resolution specialists from across the known universe. The Vexthori had become the most passionate advocates for this new approach. Supreme Commander Zaryux, now a key advisor in the Collaborative Nexus, often spoke about the moment of their fundamental transformation. We thought technology was about control, he would say, his neural interfaces now a symbol of cooperation rather than conquest. We learned it was about connection. The quantum infiltration program that had once been a secret weapon was now an open-source framework for cross-species communication. What looked like simple movement was now recognized as a complex language of mutual understanding, a way of communicating that transcended traditional barriers of language, technology, and biological difference. Lieutenant Rodriguez now led the Adaptive Dynamics Research Division, where martial arts, quantum physics, and diplomatic strategy merged into a holistic approach to potential conflicts. During one of their annual commemorations, Dr. Rivera approached Captain Chen with a reflective smile. "We didn't just defend humanity," she said. "We redefined what defense means." The facility's walls were lined with holograms showing the transformation, images of that first dismissive meeting, the subsequent conflict, and the remarkable peace that followed. Each display told a story of how being underestimated could be transformed into the greatest strength of all. As the sun set on New Terra, casting long shadows across the training grounds, the sound of warriors, no longer divided by species, but united by a common understanding, could be heard practicing their quantum communication techniques. The last laugh belonged not to the technologically superior, not to the physically strongest, but to those who understood the most fundamental truth of existence. True strength lies in the ability to transform, to understand, and to grow. And humanity had only just begun to explore its potential.